Cobra Quake sounds like one of those terrible Sci-Fi Channel original movies, so I guess that means G.I. Joe was like 30 years ahead of its time? The Joes are en route to Tokyo to protect some kind of third world economic delegation, which seems like kind of a dumb target for Cobra, but there's Cobra Commander, and he is indeed interested for some reason. He orders Wild Weasel to shoot down a G.I. Joe plane, and I'm sure I've already made a joke about this guy's name being Wild Weasel, but I mean, come on. Wild Weasel? He and his guys force the Joes down in a jungle somewhere, creating a perfect runway with a handful of missiles. Presumably this is their version of the tank that shoots bridges. Much to Wild Weasel's surprise, the Joes he forced down don't just surrender, but instead put up a fight. What do they think, they're some kind of elite fighting force with a massive inventory of cutting-edge weapons and vehicles? So the Joes fight off Cobra handily, and Wild Weasel swears revenge. I do not know how these guys are going to sleep at night knowing that a murderous grudge is being held by none other than that most terrifying of Cobras, Wild Weasel. Alright, I'm done now. I guess I was hoping that Wild Weasel will become the next Thrust, but you can't force these things. Thrust. Oh, and Cobra Commander explains why disrupting this summit is so important.
Cooperation among nations is dangerous to Cobra. The economic summit must be stopped.
I hate when people get along. That's not evil, it's the opposite of evil.
Dude is practically channeling Skeletor here. Meanwhile, in Hokkaido, Quick Kick and Bazooka are training some new recruits.
How did I do, Bazooka-san?
Oh boy. I'm not sure which is more offensive, that accent or Quick Kick's terrible movie quotes. No, it's the accent, but Quick Kick is still pretty lame. Thankfully, the proceedings are interrupted by the titular event, but sadly it's just an earthquake caused by Cobra. I was hoping the earth would open up and a million actual Cobras would slither out, but you can't have everything. Cobra Commander is pleased that his test earthquake on Hokkaido went well and sets his sights on Tokyo next. Dude, those guys have survived Godzilla, Mothra, and Gamera, friend to all children. They're not scared of your earthquake machine. Also, the Baroness is in this scene, so we can infer from that the woman in the G.I. Joe training camp is not the Baroness in disguise. That's called deductive reasoning. To determine the source of the mysterious earthquakes, Flint sets up a meeting between Lady J and a leading Japanese seismologist in an ancient temple. Sure, that's always the best place to find scientists. Lady J remembers to take her shoes off before entering, which is not only a Japanese thing, but also apparently a Canadian thing, because anytime I enter a Canadian's home, they're weirdly insistent that I remove my shoes, bordering on obsessive. This has nothing to do with this episode, I just think it's strange. Some Cobra dudes in robes, who I guess are wizards of some kind, kidnap the scientist, but Lady J and Bazooka pursue. Then all three of them, including the scientist, are Storm Shadow. And then more Storm Shadows show up, bringing the total to like 10 Storms Shadow. Then Quick Kick shows up and fights the main Storm Shadow, which at least makes more sense than that time they tried to convince us that Storm Shadow's arch-nemesis was Spirit. Although why he's still not fighting, Snake Eyes remains unclear. The pursuing Joes are attacked by stick-wielding puppets, then drop down a trapdoor. Bazooka then rubs his butt for like 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Lady J finds a book at the scientist's house, which contains a map so highly detailed that it only has Tokyo on it. Then she's captured by the Baroness. So Bazooka, Quick Kick, and that lady recruit, whose name is Takeo, go after her. And this thrilling action sequence happens.
Oh boy. Landmine. I'll disarm it.
Leave it, Bazooka.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I mean, okay, there has been a running joke about Bazooka being terrible at disarming bombs, which I didn't mention because I was too busy saying Wild Weasel and talking about Canadians and their bizarre policies on footwear. But even bearing that in mind, what exactly was the point of that exchange? The Joes find their friends and Cobra Commander dumps a bunch of snakes on them. Okay, so I take back what I said before. Maybe you can have everything. In his haste, though, the commander failed to remember basic biology. A deadly snake's predator is, of course, the fire extinguisher. And wouldn't you know it, there was one hanging right on the wall of the prison. Curse Destro and his slavish devotion to safety compliance. The Joes locate Cobra's assorted earthquake-producing bombs around Japan, and naturally everything comes down to Bazooka having to disarm one of them. But at least this scene actually goes somewhere, which is more than we can say for Wild Weasel's empty threats of revenge. Wild Weasel.